Tonight we meet the guy who first said, I'm challenging the Rhode Island Speaker of the House.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Steve Frias is here. We're going to have a lengthy conversation with him, and I'm probably going to, I am. I know that's because we planned this show in advance. Take a few days off and you lose your edge. How are you? Nice to have you in on a 93-degree day. As we record the program this afternoon, it feels like it's about 93 in here too. So we're smoking Steve out a little bit, but we'll have some fun with him. He's the first candidate to announce that he's running against Speaker of the House. He has a competitor now. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But how can we start the show without reflecting on Hillary and what we term, as we go to the rundown, her escape? See, only 2 items tonight, because I want to spend some quality time with Steve. But this headline is a tough one. I'm not sure the Republicans are playing this exactly right. I think what the FBI director said is enough to really damn her candidacy. Here's the latest from CBS.
FBI Director James Comey will testify before the House Oversight Committee tomorrow morning. Republicans want to know why Comey did not recommend charges against Hillary Clinton for using a private email server while serving as Secretary of State.
We have seen nothing but stonewalling and dishonesty from Secretary Clinton on this issue, and that means there are a lot more questions that need to be answered.
Comey said investigators found no criminal intent, but that Clinton and her aides were extremely careless in handling her email.
She was guilty. She was guilty.
During a campaign stop in Raleigh, North Carolina last night, presumptive Republican nominee Donald Trump said the system was rigged and Clinton is unfit to be president.
Hillary Clinton can't keep her emails safe. And you know what, folks? She sure as hell can't keep our country safe.
You know, Director Comey, in that whole presentation, ran about 15 minutes yesterday. He looked like he just wanted to say, I can't indict her, she's running for president. Or I can't recommend an indictment, she's running for president. I'm all jammed up. His arguments, I think, were salient. His analysis of whether the law is applied. But, you know, the Republicans are really playing this in a funny way. They're damning the administration for not indicting versus spending a lot of time working on Hillary in terms of what the report actually brings out, which is that she was extremely careless with security material in the form of email. It's a terrible choice for Americans right now. For those of you who can't even think about Donald Trump being in that elected office, you still feel that way. For those of you who are thinking, well, maybe Hillary, you know, is veteran status enough, this jolts you because now your confidence is shaken in her. Trump says what he's got to say, and he has every right to beat the tar out of her on this whole thing, politically, of course. And, of course, Hillary today, in a speech just as I was driving in for the production of the show today, is whacking Trump on the bankruptcies and da-da-da-da. But she doesn't recognize, and her people don't seem to recognize, that it rings a little bit hollow, or a lot of bit hollow, when she's got this hanging over her head. Now, it's not an indictment. And the Attorney General is not going to flip on the FBI director, right? So she's scot-free when it comes to due process. She shouldn't be scot-free when it comes to the pain of the campaign and having to answer for this irresponsible behavior. Seems to me that if this campaign ignores the matter and doesn't do one more, you know, broad address, Hillary running around talking about how bad Donald is when she's got this situation hanging over her is just not going to help her. Now, she's got enough of a gap in the polls that she may survive this, but they're playing with fire if they ignore it. And, of course, Comey coming in to see the congressional hearing tomorrow will only add fuel to this fire. Crazy time, man. Crazy season. All right, let's talk about Stephen Frias. So this was all about, you know, running against this guy. This is the Speaker of the House, Nick Mattiello. And last week, we met for the first time Shauna Lawton, an upstart candidate in District 15 in Cranston. She has worked on some social issues. The HPV virus was a big deal to her. And during that process, she learned, she says, that the General Assembly needs people like her. She's second into the race. You'll meet Steve in a second, but here's Shauna from last week.
Because I'm the same as everyone else in the district. I'm hardworking. I've struggled financially. I have 2 kids in the school system. I feel as though I'm being taxed left and right. And I really believe that people are fed up.
Here's the headline that announced that Steve was actually getting into this race. He was the first Republican to do so. And he has the full support, despite some of the political flurry in the state Republican Party regarding this race, the full support of the chairperson of the party.
I have made no bones about it. I've told her. I said I overwhelmingly support Steve Frias for this race. There were no other contenders. I'm not trying to not give her a fair shot, but my support for Steve is unwavering in his run. I think he can win this seat.
Full support of the chairman.
That's a good thing to have, I think.
I bet. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you. We can get into politics of District 15 Republicans, which in some ways, for a guy like you that's been around a while, it's almost funny, but it's not funny because people have a right to run. But before we can get into this, the chairman, I know, was hunting you down during this entire calendar year, trying to convince you to run. He had his eyes. He may, quite frankly, have slightly abdicated his responsibilities to build a bigger field in an effort to just keep working you over. Is that really how it went?
I don't know what went through Brandon's mind. I just know that he would call me every couple of days about this race. Now, I always told him there were other races to bother other people about. I can tell you that right now. But he kept calling me and saying, you got to do this. This is really an opportunity, and the people need a choice in that district. They need a strong contender. And this started off as kind of like, thanks, I appreciate the attention, but I'm really not interested. And what ended up happening is that the speaker kept making more mistakes and having more problems. And so I started saying to myself, all right, somebody needs to challenge this guy. And I kept waiting for some white knight to show up, somebody else who wanted to do this. But in the end, I saw what was going on, and I said, I got to step up and give him the best race I can.
Well, the interesting thing about a district race and about tackling the speaker is that while he has such grand statewide responsibilities, you can only find a candidate from the neighborhood.
Absolutely.
You can only find a candidate from District 15. And how many Republicans are there in District 15 that would be in a position to actually rattle his cage? Well, we find out that there might be 2.
There's at least 2 of us, right?
But were you before we get into the competitive nature of your own primary?
Right.
What was the final trigger? What was it that you thought? You know what? All right, that's it. Got to go. Andiamo.
This is the honest truth: is the John Carnevale situation. Now, he did the toll thing. I didn't like the toll thing. Then the Galison thing came out, and I thought that was bad. And then how he lectured the media when they were going after him on grants, I thought that was bad. But when John Carnevale's on TV with a T-shirt over his head, and you know what this is about, he's not living in the district. Now, the speaker at that point can easily say, John, I know you don't live in the district. You shouldn't be running again. And as a matter of fact, I'm taking you off the House Finance. Instead, he says, oh, I'll talk to him. Oh, he told me he lives in a district. I'll believe him. I'll let the process roll out. I said, this guy doesn't get it. This guy is letting this guy stay on as the House Finance Vice Chair.
By the time the story had broken, there were, days, weeks left in the session.
Yes.
He'd already been jolted by his finance chairman, Ray Gallison, from Bristol, having to exit stage left for what we still don't know is some investigative worry.
Exactly.
You blame him for running out the clock on this with Carnevale. You think he should have at least figuratively and symbolically,
At a minimum, he still, when that story broke, it was on the Monday before the session ended. I would have said, you've got to step down. I'm going to send a statement loud and clear that we're not going to tolerate this stuff. Now, after Gallison and after all these things, he's going to have this guy sit on as House Finance Vice Chair. I don't care if they'd only meet once between then and the end of the session. Send a statement, we're not going to tolerate this.
So that was it for you?
That was the straw that broke the camel's back, and I said, I think I got to do this.
All right. A little later in the broadcast, we'll obviously talk some issues. I'm sure the tolls are something that you've got some concerns over. We'll learn a little bit more about you and your history of the Republican Party. But when we come back, we'll talk about the competitive nature of the primary, which for analysts like me seems like an inefficient use of Republican time. I'll see what Steve thinks about that. In the meantime, let me just remind you that if you're thinking about remodeling, Cumberland Kitchen Bath Design Center ought to be your choice. It's funny, I was just spending some time in the kitchen this morning. Every day since our remodel of the kitchen with Cumberland Kitchen Bath Design Center, I said, boy, this was a good investment. You know, sometimes you got buyer's remorse and say, geez, I don't know if we should have spent the money to do it. We're really happy. And by the way, it's not just kitchens. If you're thinking bathroom, that's a whole nother change and a plus for your quality of life for your family. No matter what, kitchen or bath, it'll be on time and it'll be on budget. Cumberland Kitchen Bath Design Center. More with Steve Frias when we come back. Stay with us.
In a primary, it's not a general election. Steve can go out and he can walk his district the same as me, and he can talk to people about the issues, and I can walk my district and talk to people about the issues. I can come here and I can talk about the issues, but I'm not going to debate him.
That is Shauna Lawton, who last week, you probably saw the expression on my face.
Yeah.
You don't want to debate him. So Shauna announced after Steve did, although the folks who support Shauna and Shauna herself would say that she was contemplating running in District 15 against the Speaker of the House, Nick Maniello, well before you got warm to the idea. And based on their own timetable description, it's probably true, because you were really only engaged. Your final straw was the Carnivale thing, that only just popped up. Anyway, let's go to that, and then we'll back in. Shauna says she's all in on this race, and she won't debate you here on the radio at the senior citizen. Did you see that?
Yes, I've seen it and I've heard about it.
Were you surprised? Do you know Shauna?
I met her once and we had a nice conversation. I think she's a well-intentioned person.
Yeah,
and
she's sharp.
You know, she has the right to do what she wants to do. She doesn't want to debate me. Okay. I think that in the end, candidates debate one another. That's part of the process. That's how they inform the voters. That's okay with me. I mean, I'm going to go door to door. I'm already started going door to door. I'm going to get my message out. And in the end, I think people will understand why I'm running, why I make the best candidate to take on the Speaker. If Shauna doesn't want to debate, that's her choice.
Well, sure. I mean, and I think that's high road of you. I've positioned you with my analysis here and on the radio as kind of the, for lack of a better term, and I mean this with respect, the blue chip candidate to run against the Speaker of the House. You've been involved in the party for a long time. You know, I've seen you on occasion at Republican events. You've been somebody who's, you know, been active on the board. You've helped to create and discern rules. You're a sharp lawyer. You've been in the game.
Right.
You were a candidate way early in your life a couple of times,
Yeah,
right?
I was when I was in college.
Yeah. It doesn't give you a right to be the only person running, but I thought, for heaven's sake, they should have cleared the deck and found something else for Shauna to do. At the same time, she's got a right to run. But I would think you'd be viewed inside a Republican primary, as small as the constituency might be, as the favorite. And so it's usually the favorite that says, I'm not debating the challenger. Debating the challenger. I think that's why it kind of threw me. It might have thrown you and a whole bunch of other folks.
Right.
Do you think you're going to make her pay that price? In other words, will you be running ads talking about the idea that she doesn't want to engage? Are you going to make her pay for this decision, or are you just going to do your thing without paying any attention to her?
Basically,
hard to predict, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to predict, but I'll tell you what I'm doing right now. So I go door to door. Voters recognize my name, some of them. They've read it in the paper. They've heard actually people talk about your show. My response is very good. They say, I'm voting for you, Steve. And 3 or 4, I say half a dozen so far, have said, it's too bad you have a primary. I said, well, just come out and vote for me and they'll take care of it. You know, and that's all it is. I mean, I'm just going to focus on my race, meeting the voters, and explain to them why I'm the best candidate, and Deshawn's going to do her thing.
You have $25,000 that you loaned to your campaign.
Correct.
She has to ground that money out, which is what most candidates have to do anyway. But it shows that you're committed to this. I mean, that is usually enough legitimate dough to be able to get a small campaign and a district started.
Yeah, I mean, you're running. This is the one thing that made me say I got to do this is you're running against a guy with $250,000.
Right.
You've got to have some money up
He can't
front.
spend it all in this
He can't
race.
spend it all in this race. I mean, he could do a mailer every day is what he could do, but that's going to be saturation. But you got to have enough money to get your message out. It's just not going to be shoe leather, and you have to compete. And so with $25,000, I've raised a few $100s so far, just people sending me checks by mail,
Right.
just randomly. I'm going to be able to get my message out, that all of it together, and that's why I put the money in. And it's going to be shoe leather and mailing and phones and all that stuff.
Well, you know, it's a crapshoot because the money that you raise, I would think you'll continue to put toward the campaign.
Absolutely.
Should you win, legally, you can pay yourself back, and I would expect that you would. But not often do local district candidates, especially first-timers, so to speak, put that kind of dough up. So I think it sends a message that you're really serious about this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in it to win it. I'm in it to do the best I possibly can. And putting in my money to do that is the way I'm trying to show to voters.
What do you think a primary is going to do to eat at those resources?
Most of the time, I'm going to be spending my resources on the general electorate, but I am going to have to focus some resources on some Republican primary voters. It'd be a few $1,000s potentially.
What do you think is the actual turnout? The irony of this is that you know this show is seen by the entire state, all of Bristol, Massachusetts. I mean, and online worldwide. We're talking about one tiny district. Now, listen, doesn't mean if you're running for office in a district race that we don't want to have you here because you know we think all politics is local. But the nature of this thing, at least for the qualifier for the general election, is it could be, what, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 people at the most that actually weigh in on who gets to compete against the speaker.
You could have as low a turnout as 200 people.
What?
That is how much a Republican primary generates in District 15.
I doubt that.
It's been less than 200 people. Now, it's been as
Really?
high as...
Thanks for coming.
But it could, that's what it is. It's the truth. It's less than 200. But it could be as high as 1,500. But my goal is to get hundreds of people to come out and vote for me. But you're talking about a Republican primary in one rep district, Dan. It can be very, very small, and you have no other races going on of statewide, you know, luster and attention. So it could be very small, but my goal is to get as many people out there to vote for me.
All right. So for all of you 200, when we come back, we'll talk about some of the issues. Ay, ay, ay. Again, that's the gentleman who has to receive Steve Frias or Shawna Lawton as a general election candidate. You know, who knows if we will. You know what? The 5-day weekend. Did I miss anything? Did anybody, independent-wise, jump into this thing?
Oh, we had a mysterious independent jump in at the last minute. His name is Patrick Valaire. I think I bumped into him downstairs at the Board of Canvassers this morning. I tried to say hi to him, but he just went past me. It was about 8:45.
So that's the Mattiello campaign, encouraging somebody to get in the middle of this race to minimize the opposition. We all know how that game is played, right?
Possibly.
Yeah, of course. Hey, listen, they're going to do anything they can to retain incumbency and power. It really is a funky deal that the most powerful position in the state of Rhode Island, at least by interpretation, if not Constitution itself, is the Speaker of the House, and he's elected just like every other rep is.
Yep.
Of course, voted in caucus by the other 74, minus the Republicans, who then generally come over and perfunctorily sign on to it. It's a high responsibility, the Speaker of the House.
Yes.
So if you take him out, let me ask you this. Do the district constituents weigh his juice over any particular single issue that you may raise that they may agree with? You know what I'm asking.
I think I know what you're talking about. I've talked to, going door to door so far, I've probably talked to almost 200 voters directly, just randomly. And what I get from talking to voters is they're blaming, when you're the speaker, it's a double-edged sword. It's not just about the juice which you bring to the district, blah, blah, blah. You're also responsible for the entire, if they feel you are responsible for what's going on in the State House. And when you have people in top leadership positions like Gallison, like Carnevale, like Lally, all these types of people who get into scandal, they hold him, the speaker, accountable. There are people I've talked to who knew him, who voted for him in the past, and they're telling me, Nick's changed. He's not the Nick I remember. The speakership has changed him, and he needs to go because he's becoming another Fox. And I'm quoting one of those people.
Okay, so his persona will be an issue, his decisions will be an issue, but what do you think will be the winning issues in this campaign? You can't just reflect on the opponent. You have to bring
Right.
some goodies to the table yourself. What are you thinking?
Well, when I go door to door, I tell people that I'm trying to grow the economy and clean up the State House. And I go through a litany of some issues. Repealing the tolls, lowering our tax rates below what it is in other states nearby, line item veto, ledge grant reform, term limits, reducing the General Assembly's budget. You know, our General Assembly budget is $43 million. In New Hampshire, which is a little bit bigger than us, it's like $18 million. It's like when you tell people that, they don't understand how we spend so much. So my whole thing is about making Rhode Island more competitive economically and cleaning up and reforming its state government.
When you say repeal the tolls are in a precarious situation. I think the Speaker actually, behind the scenes, would admit that this toll thing is not what he cooked it up to be at the end.
Yeah.
I was amazed how he took ownership of that issue at the end when it was really Gina Raimondo's folly in a lot of ways. Were you?
I was surprised that, yes, I was surprised too that
I mean, he amended it. He amended it. He'll say he improved it.
Yeah.
Minimized the expense, but he's still, he's still responsible for enabling legislation that could put an unlimited amount of tolls out there.
I mean,
Truck tolls, they
yes,
say.
Yeah, I mean, trucks today, cars tomorrow, of course. But what actually got me was he wasn't, he just didn't pass it. He punished people who opposed it. I mean, when those 3 Democrats who opposed the tolls got booted off their committees, that sent a signal that Mattiello, this was a big issue to him, and he was not going to tolerate dissent. And then when I think about that and the fact that he doesn't boot Carnevale off the House Finance for wearing a T-shirt over his head, well, then that's what kind of, like I said earlier in the segment, in the show.
What about the thought that some would have to say, you know what comes behind Mattiello is even worse, so we could win the battle and lose the war?
That is a very good point, and I really did think about that. And what I looked at is how other reps who up there, how they vote. First of all, you could get somebody different. Marcello could challenge and he challenged him for speaker.
From Scituate.
From Scituate. He could become speaker. I think he actually is better on some reform issues. He voted against the tolls as well. But a lot of these guys who they talk about succeeding him, they kind of all vote the same. They're all part of the leadership team. They all cook up this stuff. They all defend it. They're all on the same page on the tolls. They did nothing on Ethics Commission legislation for years. So when you say, oh, Mattiello, you got Mattiello, now you get somebody worse. They're all about the same, cut from the same cloth, my friend.
You're going to be able to handle this race? You're a father of a young family. You're a lawyer. You commute to Boston. A lot of work, huh?
That is the challenge I worry about the most, is family, work, and beating Mattiello.
Still got to put billable hours out there, don't you?
I'm doing the best I can, Dan. I'm doing the best
I can.
I
Got to pay that bill,
Yep.
Well, listen, you come as often as you see it, as the issues come up, both on the radio and the television side. Let me ask the perfunctory question. You would debate Ms. Lawton if she chose to change her mind, correct?
Absolutely. Just let me know.
All right. Good to see you.
All right.
Best
Thank you,
of luck
Dan.
in the race. When we come back, a final thought. Stay with us. So this Steve Frias, I think, is high caliber for a state rep race. So is Shauna Lawton in the District 15 race. So again, if she rethinks it, she's invited here anytime as well. I'm just thrown by the idea that Steve is thinking there could be only a couple, 300 people involved in the voting on this race. Only in Rhode Island, man. We'll see. My guess is the turnout will be more significant. By the way, if you are a candidate for state representative or state senator and you think that you've got a voice that needs to be heard on the show, do not hesitate to let us know all through the summer during the campaign season. We'll be happy to talk about it. Of course, there's this thing called the Republican and Democratic Convention, so we'll be spending a lot of time on those in July. But come August, we're going to want to hear from you. All righty, coming up on the program tomorrow, Dan McGowan is back, the crack reporter for the City of Providence for WPRI.com. See you then.